Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a seriously fascinating storyline from our source material that perfectly captures the really complex dynamics of emotional regulation, human ego, and ultimately the power of cooperation. The narrative is super fun, but the psychological implications, well, they're surprisingly deep.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here are our main stops for today. We'll kick things off with Nobita's hidden truth, move into a game of emotions and gadgets, check out the mom's supermarket race, heat things up with the great cooking battle, and finally, wrap up with victory found through cooperation.
But before we get to the core of the narrative, I've got a slightly provocative question for you. What if your anger literally burned your body? Or what if your sadness turned your blood to ice? In the real world, we internalize these feelings. But today, we're exploring a storyline where emotions have a literal, physical manifestation, and the results are incredibly telling about how poorly we sometimes manage our own feelings.
All right, Section 1, Nobita's hidden truth, or as I like to call it, the zero-mark disaster.
Every good conflict has to start with a trigger, right? Well, in this case, Nobita's mom discovers a test paper he was desperately trying to hide. And yep, it's got a big, undeniable 0 right on it. Almost instantly, his mood just plummets from baseline normal to sheer absolute terror. It's a highly relatable childhood fear for sure, but this single number acts as the ignition switch for everything that follows. His inability to cope is about to become a literal, physical problem.
Moving on to Section 2, Game of Emotions and Gadgets, featuring extreme temperatures.
So we're introduced to this completely bizarre gadget that turns our earlier question into reality. And this brilliantly illustrates how the rules work. Happiness and joy generate extreme heat, while sadness, anxiety, or fear equal freezing cold. It essentially forces the user to wear their emotions as their body temperature. Because Nobita is just so terrified about his test, his emotional pain physically freezes him into a solid block of ice. No way around it.
Notice these rapid-fire, minor inconveniences that cause his core temperature to just absolutely plummet. First, his mom finds the hidden test paper. Then, he sees Shizuka helping someone else with their homework instead of him, which really compounds the heavy weight of his academic struggles. We're watching a young guy completely fail to regulate his emotions, letting each setback stack up until his anxiety literally freezes him in place.
Now, this highlights a crucial concept: emotional volatility. Basically the tendency to change moods quickly and unpredictably. And the irony here is just golden. Doremon tries to be the wise friend, telling Nobita not to sweat the small stuff, right? But then literally moments later, Doremon himself overheats from sheer, unadulterated joy just thinking about eating his favorite snack, dorayaki. It completely proves how easily our own emotional pendulum swings from one extreme to the other if we leave it unchecked.
Which brings us to Section 3, the mom's supermarket race, and man, talk about escalating egos. So, while Nobita is battling these massive internal emotional swings, the adults are out creating their own external friction. What starts out as a totally innocent conversation between Nobita's mom and Sunio's mom quickly devolves into a petty clash. One anchors her pride and frugality and gets super defensive about her son's flaws. The other brags about her spending and fiercely defends her cooking skills. It's basically a perfect storm of self-created, ego-driven friction.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because it is absurdly fast. At minute 1, the challenge kicks off right at home. Flash forward to minute 15, and they are literally racing through city traffic, entirely consumed by this need to beat each other to the store. By minute 30, it is an all-out war at the billing counter. Unchecked egos turn a totally mundane task into a frantic competition in just half an hour.
These two mothers start treating the supermarket checkout lines like a high-stakes battlefield, literally fighting over the slow versus the fast lanes, strategizing like military generals. And the comedic irony here is off the charts. They have completely lost sight of their actual goal. They just came to buy ingredients to feed their family's dinner, but the competition has entirely blinded them to their actual purpose.
Now for Section 4, the Great Cooking Battle. Pure kitchen chaos.
The competition shifts from the store aisles straight to the kitchen stoves, and the reality of where their effort is going is actually kind of staggering. Look at this. A massive 60% of their energy is entirely consumed by ego and pride. Another 30% just lost to pure exhaustion from all the stress. Only a tiny 10% sliver of effort actually goes toward making the meal. The entire point of cooking has become a total afterthought while the kids sit starving in the next room. And if you look at their inner thoughts, it reveals the absolute peak of this stubbornness. They're literally thinking,
I am ready to do anything to win. They aren't even trying to make a delicious dinner anymore. They're just desperately trying not to lose a meaningless, self-imposed war. It's a pretty stark reminder of what happens when winning overshadows the actual task at hand.
Finally, we reach Section 5, Victory Found Through Cooperation and Putting Pride Aside.
Sanity finally prevails when they hit what is basically a psychological circuit breaker. So the crucial point is this powerful realization: we don't make food to fight, we make it for the family. This grounding thought snaps the mothers right out of their ego-driven battle. They finally remember the why behind their actions, resetting their emotional volatility back to center.
So how do they fix it? Their resolution is actually incredibly practical. Step 1. They actively choose to just stop the fighting. Step 2. Rather than throwing away all that hard work, they combine their competing dishes, bringing their different strengths together into one meal. And Step 3. They sit down and enjoy a massive collaborative feast. By combining their efforts, the final result was immensely better than anything they could have made in opposition.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to take away from our explainer today. Next time you find yourself aggressively competing with someone over something pretty petty, or you feel your own emotional temperature rising completely out of control, take a breath and ask yourself, wouldn't it be better to just work together? Managing our emotional volatility and putting the shared goal ahead of our own egos almost always leads to a better feast for everyone at the table. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep these lessons in mind and keep learning.